Hello and welcome to the Bigger Than Us podcast. I'm your host, Raj Daniels, and today I'd like to welcome Kenny Green to the show. Kenny Green is a CPA who assists organizations in the integration of ESG principles and sustainability reporting. In addition, he is the founder of Green Passion Projects, an organization that consults with professional athletes and entrepreneurs to create effective business strategies. Kenny's background includes working with NBA star and Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward on a community fundraiser, consulting with Grammy winning songwriter Stephen Batty on a social impact music video featuring Super Bowl champ DeMarcus Ware and Snoop Dogg, and partnering with the Jackie Robinson Park of Fame on a holiday extravaganza for the underserved families. Kenny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Raj. How are you?
Kenny, I'm doing very well, thank you. Kenny, where in the world are you?
Well, I'm in Stamford, Connecticut, and if you don't know much about this region of the United States, I'm about 25 minutes from the Bronx, New York. So we're close to New York City.
And how's the weather up there?
It's great for this time of year. In this time of year, you're never really sure what you can get in Connecticut. It can be a blizzard, and it can be sunny the next day and 60 degrees. And so it's been pretty mild right now. So I'm just going to take this and enjoy it.
Now, you mentioned the Bronx, New York, and we are recording today on April 2nd. We are in the beginning of, I don't think we've reached the middle of the coronavirus pandemic right now. How are things up there for you?
Well, we're pretty much on lockdown. We're heeding the warnings that are out there. We're staying home. We're staying home to stay safe, to do our part, and to mitigate the spread and reduce the curve, as we've heard on many newscasts. So I think the community here is doing their part to stay inside and stay safe.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Kenny. Kenny, I like to open the show by asking my guests the following question. If you were asked to share something interesting about yourself, what would it be?
That's a great question, and I'm like excited every day about the work I do. So I'm really thinking about something that people really don't know, and I think for me to have moved to this great purposeful work, I mean, I started in public accounting when there was the Big Six, and for those that are listening that are in finance, that was when I started Arthur Anderson, when there was Deloitte, Ernest and Young, KPMG, Price Waterhouse, and Coopers, and before the merger. So I started at that time when there were the Big Six, and I left 3 months before the Enron scandal. So after that news broke, and Anderson was no more, and all of that work ended up getting absorbed by the other firms. I got calls from a lot of my friends saying, "Are you okay?" And I didn't know what happened, and I kind of found out the news just like everyone else on TV. So it was a blessing for me that I had already found my landing spot and moved on when there were a lot of people that were kind of searching and scrambling when the news broke.
You know, it's an interesting point you brought up. Since we're going through this time in both economic and health uncertainty, we forget 2001 was that Enron?
Yeah, so that was about 2000, 2001. It was about that time. Yep.
Right. And Arthur Anderson and what happened then and some of the economic tumult we went through at that time. And, a lot of us got through it, but we still remember. And as we're going through this time, hopefully we can kind of do what we did back then and come together and help each other out.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look back, I mean, we as a country, as a people, have been very resilient. I mean, we've been through economic highs, economic lows, and we're going through a period here where is a slowdown of everyone. But I think in this period, there is space for us to still take time to think and really think about what is our purpose? What do we want to do? How do we want to use this extra time that we've been given? I've realized that being home, I have extra time that I used to put for commuting and things like that. That's now I have that time in my day. How am I going to effectively use that. So I have really been looking at the positivity or the positive benefits of this, and really trying to use that to in this period to come out stronger.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, you kind of hinted at it earlier, but can you share a little bit about your current endeavor or company?
Sure. So right now I'm the founder of Green Passion Projects, and what I do in my work is I've been coaching athletes, entrepreneurs in some of their strategic planning, and then helping companies just understand the principles of ESG and sustainability. So I'm really living the dream now, which is great. I found my calling, and I've been able to work in it. So I'm really excited about what I get to do on a daily basis, because what I get to do is help others be better and help others connect with their purpose work and improve our local and global communities. So I'm just excited about what I get to do on a daily basis.
Well, I love the play on words with your last name being Green, Green Passion Project, sustainability. It all seems to be serendipitous.
It is, Raj, and I tell people I was born for this, and it was really just took me time to realize, what my calling was, and that was the key thing for me, just figuring that out. I think in my career, I started in, as I said before, and in finance, and I held roles from FP&A to accounting and audit, and my wife, who knew her calling since she was, I would say, 8 years old. She knew she wanted to help children on the television, using the television medium. So she kind of knew that, her growing up. And when I think about her and all my other friends, my friends from college, my colleagues, she was really the only person that really knew their calling. And I would say the rest of us were working, and it wasn't until just following her, seeing what she was doing, and I ended up going to this amazing dinner with a Grammy winning singer. She had just released, at that time, this is where mobile apps were new, and she was working on a app that was a storybook, that was for kids. And so we go to the release dinner, and just talking with all the people in that room. I had people at my table that had worked with Lady Gaga and other singers, just musicians that were musicians, but they had other talents as well. And it was just talking with these people and asking them questions like, how did you do this? And what's driving you? Made me realize that I was the only person in the room that didn't understand their calling or purpose, and everyone else in the room did, and I wanted to be like them. So I started to, from that day, that was a pivotal change in my life. I started to figure out, what was my calling, what was my purpose, what are my passions, and I followed those to where I am today.
So I appreciate you sharing that. Honing in specifically on the finance side, how have you seen things change over the course of your career, specifically related to ESG?
I think for, growing up, starting in public accounting, the one term that you would hear was shareholders. We're working to maximize shareholder value, and that was the only narrative that I pretty much heard. Probably the first 10 to 15 years of my career was maximize shareholder value. And so, if you had to make a decision, if you're a finance manager, and you had to make a decision, your ultimate guiding principle was, is this going to maximize shareholder value? And I would say, just over the last 5 years, I would say the narrative has really changed to really include all the stakeholders, and think about, well, you have other stakeholders like the community, like your employees. Um, how are you taking into account a company, those other stakeholders? And with that sentiment changing, and I think with millennials really being focused on, the why behind their purchases and their consumption choices, has combined and created this wave where now they're asking these questions of companies. So what do you do? for the environment? What are you doing around diversity? What are you doing just to make sure your life cycle of your products in the environment? What are they doing? They're asking these questions that companies are now starting to say, well, I will tell you what we're doing, and hopefully by telling you that, that will end up being a reason why you will pick my brand versus another. So I think ESG really has come to its place with that shift. And being a finance person, I think for us, we have been able to show that companies that really measure and monitor and manage ESG metrics outperform their peers.
So, specifically, when you're consulting your clients, both from a macro level and a micro level, when you're consulting them regarding ESG sustainability, what do you share with them, or what do you tell them or advise them to do? Again, both from an overarching and then perhaps a few tactical steps.
I think the first thing to do is really understand what you understand your markets and you understand your consumers, but what are your consumer concerns? And that's the first thing to understand. Well, what are their concerns besides delivering a product to them that works? And they have other concerns. And so trying to understand that consumer base is the first thing. And then once you understand that, then you start to understand, well, what are the processes that we have in our company that affect those? And then can we start measuring the metrics that are around those? So it's kind of a step process, 1, 2, 3 step process. And I think it starts with really understanding the target consumer and what are their concerns. It's the first thing. And then you kind of move forward to the others.
And you mentioned packaging earlier. Are there any other, perhaps repeatable or items that you've seen that your clients can start looking at right away?
Yeah, I think for when you think about ESG, I think we all quickly go to the E, which is the environmental side, and which is great, and that gets us started. And manufacturing companies, I would say, have the biggest, I would say, opportunity when you think about packaging, because they're sending out products over and over again the same to individuals. And so they start thinking about, well, what are those packaging? How do we package that, and how do we get it to our consumers? And usually that has a cost. And what they realize is that they can make choices that not only are better for the environment, but also reduce costs. So I think that really has got the ear of financial leaders, of boards, and of company functional leaders, is that you can do both at the same time, which is, you've heard the triple bottom line. I mean, I think you can make sure that you still make a great profit there, reduce costs, but you're also making sure you reduce your carbon footprint or other environmental impacts by doing things like that.
And what have you seen in the S and the G?
In the S and the G, and especially in the social side, I think the biggest topic that's really the buzzword we've been hearing is diversity and inclusion. And I think in that area, I think companies now are starting to report. I mean, I've seen board reports on the makeup of the board, and I think that has been the biggest trigger, is that having the board start to measure their composition around diversity and inclusion has really just triggered management and the company to start to look at it in other functional areas. So I think that narrative is great. And I think what people are starting to understand is that these diverse ideas will bring the diverse people can bring diverse ideas to the table. And you just have a full organization, a full company, by having a seat at the table, which is the premise of the inclusion part, to make sure that you have a seat to make decisions. So I think that has been great. And governance, I started in audit, so governance is still near and dear to my heart, and that kind of is blending with the boards starting to require and say that we want the business to report some of these metrics to us, and that would be total ESG metrics. Let us know what's happening, organizations. So I think we see this wave of all of these elements starting to really turn corporations and infuse what I call corporate purpose, which is that we're doing great business, but we have a purpose that we are enhancing something in society at the same time. So I think companies are starting to be able to do both of those things, which makes a tremendous impact. Being that some of the reason why I moved into ESG is that I was helping the athletes who are influencers connect with the community, and they were agents of change. And then when I started to really get interested in ESG, I realized that corporations have multinational reach. They are have large employer base, and they have tremendous consumer reach, and so they are very big actors in affecting just the mindset, and just can just make a significant impact around the globe if we bring that agent of the entity with into the corporate purpose space. So that's what really excites me to engage in corporations and really have that conversation of like, how can we make money and do good at the same time.
So, staying with D&I for a moment, what can people, leaders in the community do? Do you have any examples of anything you do along the lines of D&I introducing ESG or, climate change to the community?
Yeah, and that's I'm working on an amazing project now with the Boys and Girls Club here in Stanford, and I work with them in many aspects. I brought Charlie Ward, who played for the Knicks, to the gala, and through that just connection with them, I moved to helping them build a music education program, music studio, and now we're working on a climate change action group for teens and young adults. And I'm super excited about this because just traditionally, I would say kids from disadvantaged communities and households um, have not really engaged in sustainability. And to be able to kind of just really show them what sustainability is about, teach them why it matters to the world and why it matters to them, and then engage them and give them the tools so they can engage in making change around sustainability is just amazing. So I'm really excited about helping the kids, the teen, and our young adults in the community get engaged in that.
And you had mentioned something about an electric vehicle project too?
Yes, and also with the we have an electric vehicle club in Connecticut that their mission is to be evangelists of electric vehicles. They want to increase the adoption of electric vehicles, and they typically have been working with, I would say, more of the affluent towns that more of these towns have a high adoption rate per capita of electric vehicles. So they've been spending time with those communities, but really inviting them to come to Stanford, which happens to be the second, has the second highest adoption rate of overall of electric vehicles, but doesn't really have a presence of any group really, being evangelists for the cause. So we want to really get this community engaged, which is, a mix of urban and suburban here, and really to just get this community to be engaged in electric vehicles, understand its importance, understand that there are different types. I mean, Tesla's one, but there are a lot of electric vehicles that fit your budget, but they serve the same purpose. They reduce your carbon footprint, have much lower maintenance costs, and show them how this connects them to be able to really have an impact on climate change just by changing how you drive. So I think I'm really excited about that as well.
So you've got involvement in the community. You mentioned that event earlier today. The crux of our conversation is the why behind what you do. And it's obvious that you're driven, but you could also be doing 100 other things. There's opportunity cost. So what's your driving why? What keeps you doing this every single day?
And it was, I took the time really to figure out what my calling is, and my really it started with exploring my passions, and then once I figured out what I was passionate about and I started working in, I moved to this purposeful work. What drives me is that growing up, just growing up, I grew up in Washington D.C. There were a lot of people that helped me to get to where I am now, and now I have the opportunity after going to these great schools, meeting these great people, getting galvanized around what ESG is. I have the opportunity to give back in this massive way, and for me, it's just what I was called to do. It's just what I have, what makes me happy, to really, talk to people about doing purposeful work. And everything in ESG, everything I touch in ESG, I can tie it back to how it makes a change to help everyone around me. And that was so different than the work when I first started, and I was doing debits and credits, and I couldn't really tie what I was doing to the rest of the world. And that was the linkage when I finally moved to doing this work. I can every day know how the work that I do improves me, improves my family, my community, my local community, and the global community. So having that linkage, it just, for me, keeps me on fire, keeps the fire burning, on why that I do this work, and it's so exciting.
So I appreciate you sharing that. As an interviewer, it's my job to push a little bit. So it takes some courage to pursue your passion. In your case, like, what did you do to embody that courage and to decide that you wanted to go for it?
Sure. Yes. So I think the courage came from really, just having great people, I think, around me, that were living in their dream. And that person was my wife, who was doing that. And she introduced me to, a community of other people. I think I talked about the dinner that I went to, that for the app release for the singer. And it just having discussions with those people got me to see that there was more that I could do with my life. And for me, that was a unique time because I had just, come back from a trip. I was in Singapore, and I was offered the opportunity to lead the finance team there. Was really having discussions with my wife about moving the entire family to the other side of the globe, and had to really try to answer this question of, my wife was willing to do it, but she would have to give up her purpose work, for me to for us to move to the other side, of the world here. And I had to really start asking my question: am I doing my purpose work? And can I look her in the eye and say, yes, I'm doing what I was called to do? And I couldn't look her in the eye and ask her to give up, her dream and her purpose work for work that I wasn't, that I knew deep inside wasn't my calling and my purpose. So that was really where I had to uh, go on this soul searching mission and say, well, what is my calling? What am I passionate about? And what I typically tell youth and adults that I meet, and they say, how did you make the change? Is really, I started with focusing on my passions and using the training that I have. And I think we all have unique training. We're trained in different things. Mine happened to be finance, and I had a passion of things that I had a community improvement, and I just kind of merged them together, and until I got to this state that I'm in now. I mean, I could not have predicted this 6 years ago, that I would, be doing this great sustainability work, connecting, athletes with the community, and so on and so forth. I would never have imagined that, but I knew that I wanted to, do something that was passionate, what I was passionate about, and figure out what my calling is.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, and thank you to your wife too. Don't want to forget her. And you kind of mentioned, some advice there, but my question is, if you could share some advice or words of wisdom with the audience, what would it be?
And I think really is listen to we've all been given a voice inside of us that clues us into the work we should be doing. Um, it's listening to that voice, and I think a lot of times when we're young, we're kind of asked early, like, what do you want to do with your life? And of course that's a big question, and none of us really know, except for the few that it's that voice is really loud, and they know they want to be an actor or a singer or something like that, or a doctor. They know early, but I would say the majority of us really don't know. But you use time and you train in something, and that gets you in the mode of learning to better yourself, and then listen to your passions and start following those. I mean, I started the way I started was volunteering my passions and in my passions. So it wasn't where my first engagement was a paid engagement. It was really volunteering. And I started volunteering, and one thing led to another, and then I'm asked to do something else, and you end up meeting different people that ask you for your skill sets. So I think the advice I can give is start if you're sitting right now and you're in your cube at your desk, or now we're all home, so at your home office, you can just start volunteering your skill sets with someone that you want to help. I mean, you have to think about who you're going to serve, and my group was the community, and I just started with my local community, and then it just expanded to the global community, and that's how ESG really played its role in my life. Is that I realized that through ESG I can help the global community, and when I started out just thinking a little bit smaller, just my local community. So it's really, it's a continuous thing. Is the other point that I want to leave with everyone, is that you'll start one place and you'll keep building. It's a continuous thing. It'll be, you'll start one place and but you'll end up in another. But you have a great direction you're heading in. And so that's what the figuring out what your purpose is that you'll be heading towards it always. And that's what you want to make sure you're focusing and heading in that right direction. So it's all about figuring out the direction. You might not know every step, but it's really trying to make sure you're just headed in the right direction.
I really appreciate you sharing that. It's been a great conversation. Is there anything that we have not explored that you'd like to talk about or share before we go?
I think that was great. I mean, I'm glad we got to talk, and I'm just excited to talk to you. And thanks for the invitation. And I hope that I was able to share some things that would inspire someone.
Thank you, Kenny, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for listening. And if you like what you heard, please give us a rating and review at Apple Podcast. Bigger Than Us is a Nexus PMG production. And if you want to show your support and help us grow, please share with a friend or reach out to us on social media, where you'll find us under our Nexus PMG handle.